Well, there's a little antitrust action that's pushing a certain stock down. You want to know what that stock is and the information on a whole lot more? Stay tuned for The Rebel's Edge. Bang!
There she blows. How about these markets, John, the way we're just whipping around because there's no true leadership right now, and we've got all the different various things that are going. I'm still shocked, I think, John, coming into Monday after what we'd seen in the weekend and where we are right now. It's just baffling to me just to see how much things are getting hit. And they didn't start out that way, but the 600-point move yesterday from being up 300 to down 300 in the Dow certainly was an eye-opener.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks that are pretty nervous right now, Pete. And as you said yesterday, very accurately, it spiked the VIX to, I think, the high of the year yesterday. Yep. It's down today. The VIX is down, but still 18 and change right now, just that close to 19. So yeah, there's nervousness. People are getting some hedges on, and you can't hardly blame them. By the way, folks, that is Pete Najarian over there. I'm Jon Najarian, and we welcome you to The Rebel's Edge. Every day, Monday through Thursday, we give you stocks, we give you macro minute, we give you fantastic futures, a little take on sports, and then we set you free yet again to go out into the wild.
And it's wild.
So let's get started, Pete, with the macro minute. Yep. Today, I'm going to say, in case you missed it, folks, the housing data sucks. Housing starts crashed by almost 15% in March. That's massively worse than the 2.4% drop. I can't wait for Karine Jean-Pierre to start addressing that, since she likes manipulating these numbers as best she can. Building permits also down huge, dropped over 4.3% versus an expectation of a drop of less than 1%. So we've got really nothing good happening in housing right now, Pete.
And that's one of the big pulls on the market already today. Real estate, that's down about 1%. That's definitely hurting things. I'm surprised it's not down even further, John. I mean, it's certainly something we're all focused on. The other thing I think we're focused on is this afternoon, looking at what Powell's going to say, right? I mean, the commentary coming from the chair, Jerome Powell, is something that is always going to be market moving. And we just have to make sure, John, that is he going to slip a little bit and maybe get too long-winded and start getting up there? Or is he going to, we got to make sure that his feet are nailed to the ground, that he actually gets up and says, all right, that's it. That's what I've got, and I'll see you later. But I'm not sure that's what's going to happen. So it'll be very interesting to see and what that commentary really is today.
Yeah, it will be, and it always is. So Pete's exactly right, folks. All right, let's dive into fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures, man, flying across the screen. Pete, how about this? You've been complaining about it all year. Cocoa, that is. Yep. Well, for the first time in forever, cocoa is down, and it's down pretty hard. That chart is from the upper right to the lower left in a big way. It is down 7% today. That's the biggest drop for cocoa, Pete, that I've seen in a very long time. Doesn't mean it's down for the year, folks. It's still up huge. Because beginning of the year, it was more like half of the price that it is now. So a 100% move, a little pullback is all I'd call this.
I think you're exactly right. By the way, you and I were talking just before we came on. We were talking about the treasuries, and I just think it's just phenomenal to look at what has happened recently, John. When you look at where we were in February, we were at 386, and here we are now at 468 on the 10-year. So if people don't understand it, I'll just say this. The higher that gets, the more people are yanking money out of the NASDAQ and others and moving on and moving towards those treasuries. That's something that we've been seeing. It's very, very scary to see what kind of movement that we're getting right now. But the continued climb from the 10-year, John, is something that I think is definitely going to continue to be something that hangs on the market and pulls on the market. But we should all be very much paying attention to what that number looks like.
That's very, very true, Pete. I will be paying attention to that. And the 10-year is, of course, what's influencing that housing market in a big way, folks. A lot of folks probably not canceling bids, but just stepping back. And that's why housing starts, as well as, the rest of that, as far as what people are focused on, building permits and all the rest. All right, let's talk, Pete, for a moment about Apple. One of yours and my favorite stocks. Pete's owned it for longer than I have, folks. But Samsung reclaimed their spot over Apple as the world's #1 smartphone seller. Now, that's interesting, and some people are selling based on this news. Apple smartphone shipments fell almost double digits, almost 10%, to 50 million units in the first quarter. That's still 50 million units, folks. And the other part that I'll say quickly, Pete, is that ask Samsung how much they make on services, Pete. Ask them how much they make on health and all that kind of stuff, and their app store. And then come talk to me about, they're not selling. They're selling crap. They're selling something that's ubiquitous. An Android phone is just something that you talk on and you check things out. It's great, but they don't make the money Apple makes, Pete.
Yeah. Well, and, it's all about China. It's about the expectations, the fact that there's more of an Android growth area there because of the fact. And by the way, Samsung's been the king as far as just the phone for about a 12-year span, right? I think this is the first time Apple actually got up above them, and then it slipped right back down after the quarter. So is that the biggest deal in the world? To your point, I don't think it's that big of a deal at all. The stock, nonetheless, has gotten pushed to the downside. Last I looked, it was trading about 169. It was down a couple of percent. I'll tell you what, I agree with you, John, but I would also say this is why this is a great stock for what you and I oftentimes do, which is we're trying to create an extra dividend out of what we're seeing by selling options against a long stock position. I'm not going to go any further than that, but I can tell you this, because it's kind of flatlined this year, we did get up to 198 or whatever. We pulled all the way back down, and we've been trading in a fairly tight range. Because of that, that works out pretty well for you, pretty well for me as options guys, because we're able to manipulate and do things that you wouldn't be able to do if this thing was just going straight up and then the pullbacks. This has been a very flatlined, very non-productive year so far for Apple, but nonetheless, that actually plays into the favor of a lot of us that are playing Apple in a different way.
Yeah, and think of this, folks. So I looked up just before the show, Pete, when Apple was right around 170, 169-ish, and I looked at the 170s out 1 month. How much are you getting for those? $5.60 or something like that. So what does that mean? Well, that's a 1 month out. If you got that 10 times a year, not even every month, just 10 times a year, that's $55, 56 bucks on a $170 asset. Take out your calculators, folks, and see how much you goosed up your return by doing that. That's why Pete and I love this stock still. It's not just a story about how many iPhones do they sell, how much do they make from services, and all the rest of the things that Apple does. But it's a thing when you're selling options against the stock, you're collecting rent every single month. Some of you are collecting rent every single week because you elect to do it that way. And nothing wrong with that. It's just a little more active. But if you had a $169,000 condo, are you telling me you just let it sit there empty all year, or would you collect rent from it? That's what Pete and I are doing. You should go to marketrebellion.com/get started to learn more about that. Or they could always get the book, Pete. It's
just
not an option.
It's not an option.
It's not an option. You can get it for free by going to itsnotanoption.com. That's itsnotanoption.com. You can get a free copy of the book. It'll help get you on your way if you need a little refresher in options. That'll certainly help out. All right. Second stock today, Pete, Morgan Stanley. Better than expected quarterly profit and revenue. Wealth management, that's really what Skinny and Matt do for us, Pete. That's what's happening up there with Morgan Stanley. The wealth management is killing it. They reported nearly 19% increase in earnings. And guess what? That's the first profit, or the first growth rather, in earnings that we've seen after 8 consecutive down quarters. So this is a turn for Morgan Stanley. No wonder on a soft day, it's up 4%.
Yeah, it's having a really nice day, John, and for all the right reasons. It has not quite performed the way I'm sure a lot of people would like. But nonetheless, when you look at these particular numbers, and you already gave the backdrop for why it hasn't been really performing, but when you look at what they were able to produce this time around, this go around, 18% up on those earnings, that's pretty substantial number. And it's about wealth management. It's about investment banking and all of that. Very, very similar to what we were talking about just yesterday about Goldman Sachs and some of the performance that they had. They are both in that category where they are making all kinds of money, and those margins tend to be a little bit better, I think, John, when you're talking about some of what they're getting, where they're getting the money from. It's a great quarter for Morgan Stanley. I know they're very proud of what they're doing. They got to continue to do this, but so far so good. 2024, the kickoff, this first quarter, very impressive what's going on the investment banking side.
Well, Morgan and Goldman both really reaping some of that reward. And it doesn't hurt that they've also bought the firm you and I used to own, Pete. They bought Trade Monster by basically buying E-Trade and incorporating that into some of these earnings in the very near future. So keep an eye on that. That's another reason that Morgan Stanley should be on your watch list and or on your buy list. But I can't tell you what to buy and sell, folks. I can tell you what Pete and I are doing. All right, let's take a look at IPCI. This is Intra-Cellular, Pete. And they have a phase 3 trial that went exceedingly well for their treatment that basically reduces depression symptoms on people that are already getting antidepressant therapy. And for that reason, the stock was up 10%, 15%, 20%. Now it's closing in on a 30% gain. And that's because, as Pete and I always say, it's not a phase 1 deal where everybody's enthusiastic, but you got to get through 2 more trials. In this case, this is phase 3. That's the end of the road. Now you just need the FDA to say, stamp it and say, go sell it.
Yeah. And that would be their first one. I mean, this is a really interesting company, John. And especially when I look at the fundamentals, usually you see a lot of cash burn because they have nothing out there yet, and they're burning cash trying to get their first drug out there of the pipeline. Well, they're just about there, and they've obviously had this great results this past in the phase 3. That's something I think that's really impressive what they've been able to do. They're excited about that. This is a company that definitely worth watching because that's what everybody else in the entire world of healthcare, that's what they're looking at this right now, John, saying, well, is it time to maybe make an acquisition? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that oftentimes can happen because now that you've gotten that far and the results were as good as they were, that really puts them in the driver's seat. I think the most important thing is I look at their cash to debt. They're nearly $500 million. I also look at 4 times normal volume in the first 30 minutes. Everybody was excited about this one. And surprisingly, not a lot of shorts. So this isn't a short squeeze. This is the results of somebody saying, you know what? This is a company that's ready to get out there, get that approval, and start making money. And it could be a very, very interesting stock in the future.
It's already traded 7 times full volume over a full session. It's done 4.8 million shares versus 730,000 shares a day or something like that. So that is a huge move. Pete's exactly right. All right, Pete, one more. And this one is the one we talked about at the top of the program, Live Nation. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the Justice Department is preparing to sue the Ticketmaster owner as soon as next month. And why is that a big deal? It's because in order for them to clear the purchase by Live Nation of Ticketmaster, they had to agree to certain antitrust provisions that were dumped on top of them, Pete. And apparently they might not be living up to those. And that's why the justice is going to go after these guys in a big way. And you know what? I bet there's not an artist out there that feels sorry for them.
I would agree with you. It seems like there's a lot of frustration out there. Ticketmaster draws the majority of the profits for Live Nation. And based upon what we already know, what we've heard in the past, it sure seems like things are kind of lining up that they might have a major issue here, Jon. And I'll tell you what, is this an interesting stock? It was an interesting stock. It's no longer of interest for me. I look at this. Do I think it's at the very bottom because of this hit that they're taking today? Absolutely not. I would steer clear of this one for right now, and maybe for the next couple of months, see how things play out. This could be very, very daunting. This could be very scary for Live Nation, I think, in the next couple of months.
Yeah, this is one, like I say, that I don't know anybody other than, folks that just look at it and say, I want to own it because they've got a monopoly. And for those people, I think, yeah, you're right. It is a monopoly. I don't know who else really in a big way can compete against Ticketmaster and Live Nation together. But you brought up an interesting point, Pete, about the debt. It's massive debt. And, does that come back to bite them? Is, in addition to what they're looking at here, is that debt starting to cost them more and more money? As Kevin O'Leary says, I love money. Well, that's what banks are saying to Live Nation, and they're probably looking to jack up the rates here, Pete, especially if the government's going after them. So that wouldn't be so swell. All right. Well, every day we try to find a little interesting video to share with you guys, and we were able to find one for a young guy named Xavier who lit up the combine this year. We wanted to show you some of the things he did as a freshman at the University of Texas. So, Jared, roll tape.
Hung up in the wind a little bit. Here's Worthy, makes the first man miss. Straight ahead.
He might be small, but I'd say that looks like speed, right? Does that look like speed to you?
Thompson, they fake it to him and pitch it out to the perimeter.
You want to talk about an athletic guy.
The talented freshman's off and running. It's a sprint.
Is anybody going to close that? Absolutely not.
Look at that. That guy might have lost a knee on that play, Pete. That defender.
I'll tell you, I was lucky enough to have him in fantasy football this year for college. And let me tell you, that guy lit it up every single week. Nobody can cover him.
Bama territory. From the pocket. Now
and he's going against Bama. He's going against some of the biggest teams.
Worthy's got it for a touch. Back-to-back solid carries. Quick toss.
I mean, honestly.
Xavier Worthy. Worthy is still up.
Look at how he just
The sideline. Play fake.
Unbelievable.
If you're a quarterback, that's got to be a dream to have a guy out there that literally can always get separation the way he does.
Look at that. That's what's known as separation.
63-yard touchdown and 6.
Speed kill.
Parkett holds up. Ewers.
That's you can't, and it's amazing because I don't think people fully can appreciate just how fast this guy really is until you saw him at the combine. But it just shows you how.
I think they adjusted his time from 4.28 to 4.21.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh. First of all, some of those guys are freak shows, but they're fast, but maybe they don't catch the ball so well. And I'm not going to name you, Willie, so don't worry about it. My almost teammate. I'm not going to say your last name, but there's a lot of guys that are really fast, Pete. Really fast, but might have a little harder time catching the ball. This guy just creates separation.
Yep.
He's got good hands, obviously. And Pete, I think this guy could even potentially, if they put him there, break Devin Hester's records as a return guy because he is that fast. And I don't know anybody on special teams that can keep up with this guy.
Right. I mean, they have so many receivers that have speed coming out of Texas. It's unbelievable. And they've done a great job. Sarkisian's done a great job. It's incredible just to see what these guys really look like. And that was in real football. That wasn't in some combine workout or whatever. I mean, those are fine. It's great to see the speed that they have, but you're seeing football speed when you see those clips that you just put up there. That's impressive, man. Absolutely amazing.
What do you got for sports today, Pete?
All right, so Let's get to it. Caitlyn, and I don't even think we have to say her last name anymore, but Caitlyn Clark, is she everybody's favorite person? I would say absolutely right now. Absolutely the following. Did you see her on Saturday Night Live, by the way? She did an unbelievable job there. She's done everything that you'd ever want out of a player that's gotten the focus and all of the, everybody's watching and looking, some of them looking for something negative. Well, so far, there hasn't been a whole lot of negative coming out about Caitlyn Clark. She's done a magnificent job. She was exactly what we knew was going to happen. She was the first pick, WNBA draft. WNBA has got, she's worth whatever they can pay her. I don't know how much they can, John. I think they're probably somewhat capped, but I think right now the $252,000 a year is the number one player. I think she's worth a lot more than that, because what we've seen happen already with the Fever and the tickets and the $500 tickets that used to be $10 tickets, I would say she's worth whatever she can get paid. But I just don't know if they can pay her enough, John. I'm not sure what the rules are in the WNBA, but whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. She still has Allstate and whomever else out there as sponsors that she's going to be doing commercials for. So I'm not too worried about her finances at this point. I think they're only going to go up, up, and up.
Oh, yeah. And Pete, you and I have talked about some of the people who are negative on her because there's a lot of jealousy, of course. Sure. I would be jealous if I was a WNBA player, knowing that, some of them, like Brittany Griner, had to go over to Russia to make basically bank. And she was over there and then had that problem with some paraphernalia she had in her luggage or whatever. And they held her and we had to trade out a killer for her, which I still say was a mistake. We should have got the Marine out instead. But the point is, I guess, Pete, that you've got people that are very skilled, like Brittany Griner, that have just never been able to turn the WNBA into anything more than just a sideshow. The tickets for a lot of these games, believe it or not, folks, are between $3 and $5. Well, all of a sudden you sign Caitlyn Clark, the Indiana Fever do, and well, they haven't signed her yet, but she will play for them. And the tickets for her first game are now going for $500. $500. And all of their games, I think only one game of theirs last year was on TV, Pete, the Indiana Fever. Maybe it was a couple, but this year I think almost every game is going to be on TV because that showdown with her and LSU drew 14.2 million, which we talked about. And I think she is potentially the savior of that league, but the league's going to have to, change some of the things they do. We'll talk about that at another time, but the WNBA is owned by the NBA. They can survive, but for them to thrive, they need a lot more Caitlyn Clarks and a lot less problems like they've had up until now to keep the games exciting and keep fans paying real dollars instead of $3 to $5.
I think the best clip I saw, John, were the players that are already with the Fever and immediately ripping off what they had on and putting on, their Caitlyn Clark jerseys and everything. I thought that was really cool that they were so excited. And we all knew she was the number one pick. We knew she was going to the Fever, but they were prepared for it. They were excited about it. It just shows you they know that she's a good team player and they want to have her on the team, obviously. They're going to be a much different team than they've been in the past. I can tell you that, because that's a gal who really is unbelievable. What she can do with the basketball, not many can do. And she, some of the interviews that you see and the talking with her about how she shoots the ball and just her thought process and everything, absolutely amazing. Very Jordan-like, she really does have the confidence that somebody like a Michael would have. It's incredible to watch.
All right. Maybe, Pete, maybe that Tim Grover that you and I were with down at the Grant Cardone event. Tim Grover, folks, in case you didn't know, was really the trainer, the coach, if you will, not on the basketball court, but in training for Michael Jordan and then Kobe Bryant. Maybe Tim is going to be working with Caitlyn Clark, Pete. I'll just throw it out there.
Well, if he is, she'll be even better because that guy knows what he's doing, and those were two of the greatest players ever right there. Sticking with the NBA, John, why not? So you've got the play-ins, right? They're starting. And that's pretty fun. It's pretty interesting. I think there is that element of, hey, you still have a shot. And I'm looking, I got the Lakers going against the Pelicans. The Pelicans were pretty damn good this year, by the way. Zion Williamson actually finally able to be healthy and doing all the right thing. And I think they won almost 49 games this year. Then you've got the Warriors and the Kings. So I just thought it would be, well, you got the Heat and you got the Sixers and then you got the Hawks and the Bulls, your Chicago Bulls. They can be dangerous, but unfortunately, they just couldn't get it together, John. They never could get on the streaks that they used to get on. But I'll tell you what, Chicago, they're a good team, and they're good enough to be there, so they're in for the play-in. I just don't think that's going to last very long for them. But the Sixers, I think, with Joel Embiid, this guy, he's been hurt. He missed a lot of games, but averaging about 34 points a game, John, the last 3 games, 12 rebounds. I think he's back. That should be scary for anybody, including the teams that are already in the playoffs, because I think that the Sixers are the team that I'd be the most fearful of. The Lakers, you always have to be a little intimidated that they could go somewhere. Golden State could go somewhere because of the shooting, but it just hasn't been there this year. So for me, I look at maybe Philly as the team that could be the scariest to get into those playoffs and really maybe take somebody really big down, sort of a David and Goliath.
Yeah, and like you said, Pete, you've got the play-in tournament is an interesting thing. That might be one thing the NBA has got right, Pete, to have, people be excited about it because, you get to see people basically fight for the right to be in those playoffs rather than just, okay, we've won 70 games or whatever, we're in, we're automatic. To see the teams that are willing to fight for that, I think is a good draw on television because it is, win or go home, just like the NCAA, it's win or go home. There's no second place. Like Ricky Bobby said, Pete, if you ain't first, you're last.
Ain't that the truth? Well, it should be a lot of fun. I think, it's interesting that this time of year that, first of all, we're bringing up the WNBA. I don't know how many times we've ever had the opportunity to do that, but it makes sense. Caitlyn Clark, special player, unbelievable, obviously had an incredible career. Could have stayed one more year if she wanted to, but she'll be in the WNBA, and she's going to make a huge difference there, John.
Yep. And she's already, late night shows, not just Saturday Night Live, but late night shows want her. She's very popular, and she's going to be good for all the other players in that league. Yep. Because people are actually going to tune in and watch those games because they liked watching her play. So it might be what finally cracks the code and gets people interested in watching the WNBA, because up until now, Pete, yeah, it's wonderful that the Liberty wins. It's wonderful that, Minnesota wins, but come on. The viewing audience was, room temperature. Now it's going to get heated up.
Yep.
All right, folks, we appreciate you tuning in. As always, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we are on the Rebel's Edge at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We hope you join us again tomorrow. If you need to move your game up a little, don't forget, you can just go to that website, itsnotanoption.com. That's itsnotanoption.com. And you can get that book sent out to you for free. You can also go to marketrebellion.com/get started to see all of the educational and subscription offerings we've got. So for Pete Najarian, I'll say we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Bang.